Welcome into the fantasy playoff edition / the fantasy football players championship round edition of the high stakes fantasy football show presented by the FFPC right here on the Better Sports Network. I'm Eric Balkman at Eric Balkman on the X. Of course, you know me from the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown, the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, and the Fantasy Football Players Championship. We are here for you for the next 2 hours, taking you well in to the second quarter of Thursday Night Football, featuring the Rams and Niners. Pleased to be joined tonight by one of the good ones, one of the greats, one of the up-and-comers. I would say up-and-comers, but he's ascended so far. I don't know if he can still climb any further. His name is Bradley Stalder. He is doing a lot of great things with Roto Underworld, Player Profiler, including the Stack Hunters show with Dan Williamson, and of course the in-season show that he does with Ryan Reynolds. That is entitled Man vs. Machine. You can check that out each Wednesday night at FF Stalder on the X. Bradley Stalder, please welcome to the show. Thank you so much for hanging out with me tonight.
Balky, it's always great to get that DM. It like hits the vein. There's part of me that tingles when I get a message from Eric Balkman. I'm like, there we go. We're back at it. It's such a treat to be with you again. For those who don't know, back when I got my content start with Billy Muzio, when we were the Fantasy Football Fanalists, Eric Balkman was our first guest, podcast guest. It was amazing.
Who could not get his camera to work that night, which was fantastic. It was an all-time show for sure. No, it was awesome. That I hanging out with you and Billy for sure, and it's going to be awesome tonight. I just noticed this in your X profile. You are the Riz God. This is news to me.
There's a story behind this. There's a story. So back over the summer, I made some comment about, I can't even remember what it was. I made some comment and it went viral on X to the point where all of the bots, and we know what type of bots are liking and retweeting this. We're liking and retweeting it. And so it was constantly blowing up my phone. Like, what is the notifications for this? And so Theo Greminger, director of content at Player Profiler, said, wow, Bradley, this is like a massively hitting post. You must be the Riz God if you're attracting all of these bots. So that stuck. Yes, aka the Riz God. It has nothing to do with the fact that, I have 5 children at home and, a smoking hot wife. So it has nothing to do with that. It is totally an X happenstance.
Right. I cannot wait to get done with the show tonight so I can tell my kids before they go to bed that I did a stream with the Riz God tonight. They're just going to be flabbergasted by it. And hopefully we flabbergast everybody with our amazing fantasy football knowledge tonight. On the show, we're going to go around the NFL. We're going to talk about some of these injuries that are obviously affecting you for fantasy football, including the Jets running back situation, George Pickens' hamstring, Ladd McConkey's multiple injuries, and much more. We're going to have our Thursday Night Football preview coming up in about 30 minutes, roughly, when we're going to talk about the Niners and the Rams. By the way, breaking news, Isaac Guerrero is not only on the field and warming up, he is active tonight. So we'll get into that a little bit more before you have to set your lineups. Bradley and I will tell you how we feel about Guerrero against the Rams tonight. Bradley's already built his Week 15 FFPC Weekly Challenge lineup. We're going to pick that apart, talk about why he did what he did, and what you can think or what you can expect from these players coming up in Week 15. And then we'll do some starts and sits going forward with running backs, receivers, tight ends, and quarterbacks, including but not limited to Tank Bigsby, Jalen Waddle, Mark Andrews, Bo Nix, and much more. That will be the show. We will give you live updates from the Niners and Rams when they kick off in just over an hour, so you're not missing anything, and you can enjoy a 2-screen experience. We don't care. That'll be fun as well. We're going to kick things off with John Carbone's question on YouTube right now. By the way, welcome to Tom Smith, who is watching us tonight. Thank you, Tom. Adam Thielen, Drake London, James Conner, Brian Robinson, AJ Brown. He can only start 2 of those. He has Juwan Jennings, Cooper Kupp, and Joe Mixon in the lineup. I agree with all that. He can only start 2 more. My goodness, I guess I lean towards Brian Robinson and AJ Brown here, but I can be persuaded. What do you think, Bradley? Of those top guys, Thielen, London, Conner, Robinson, and Brown, which 2 are you putting in the lineup with those other 3 guys?
I mean, those are the two you're going to be putting in. I get, though, the hesitation regarding A.J. Brown.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there are concerns about not the target share. He's number 2 in the NFL in terms of target share. He gets 33%. That's alpha dog level targets. If he was in a like average passing offense, problem is the volume's not there for the Philadelphia Eagles. That's why he's been frustrated. Only 4 receptions last week, not really getting it done. So look, the big plays are always there. And the last time that A.J. Brown complained about something, the squeaky wheel gets the grease scenario. You're not benching A.J. Brown. This is a start your stud scenario, but you got to live with the lumps, and that's the underlying lump with A.J. Brown.
I did a local fantasy football show on terrestrial radio earlier this afternoon, not even earlier, just like about an hour or so ago. I got off the air, and we have our Bust of the Week segment. And one of my co-hosts, his Bust of the Week was A.J. Brown for that specific reason, because of this potential, rift that has developed between Hurts and Brown. And obviously the passing game wasn't where we want it to be. We'll get into DeVonta Smith in a little bit here, but it wasn't where we wanted it to be. And he said his bust of the week is A.J. Brown because of that. I said, well, I could see this going one of two ways. I could see this really blowing up for the Eagles in a bad way, similar to what happened at the end of 2023, or, as you pointed out, Bradley, squeaky wheel getting the grease. The squeaky wheel in this case is a massive, oversized, electric spinning wheel, right? Like, this is the creme de la creme. This is, this is not Jahan Dotson. This is not, Marquez Valdez-Scantling. This is A.J. Blanking Brown. I will die on the hill where I am starting A.J. Brown as opposed
Arthur Juan Brown.
Yeah, exactly. Arthur Juan Brown. I will die on that hill starting him, as opposed to benching him because I think it's going to go bad. It could go bad. I feel much more comfortable with him in my lineup, especially with those other options there. That's where I fall in on it. I'm glad to hear we are of one mind here when it comes to A.J. Brown as well. Now, Mr. Bakes-A-Lot is in a half-point PPR league. Nobody's perfect. That's okay. Deebo Samuel or Malik Neighbors this week. Now, we'll get into both these players, I think, as the show goes on. But Malik Neighbors is interesting because he continues to get a lot of targets. He continues to get a lot of action in that Giants offense, but it's not high value targets. It's like, where he ends up 4 for 40 or 5 for 60 or 6 for 35. It's all these like nickel dime targets that he's been getting. 5 for 79 last week, which is good, but a lot of those came towards the end of the game. And we know Tommy DeVito is starting this week as opposed to Drew Lock, which may change things a little bit. Deebo Samuel, not been very involved. And when he has been involved, he hasn't been catching passes. He's struggling, despite what he says on X. He is struggling right now, and we are struggling to find a good reason to put him in fantasy lineups. Tonight, I've heard the argument that he's the best running back out there for the Niners, given there's no McCaffrey, there is no Jordan Mason. It's going to be Isaac Guerrero. You can make the case that he's the best running back out there. I don't know if they use him like that. When it comes down to these two, I still have more confidence in the floor and in the target volume that Neighbors is going to get, as opposed to Deebo Samuel. Maybe has the higher ceiling, better quarterback, better team. I'm still playing Neighbors over Deebo Samuel this week, Bradley.
Easily. Deebo Samuel has been garbage, and we'll get more into the Deebo stats in the Thursday night preview.
Mm-hmm.
Only in desperate scenarios are you plugging in Deebo Samuel in your Thursday lineup. And so Malik Neighbors, who leads the NFL in target share, he's the classic best player on the worst team.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Like, oh, do you play this best player on the worst team conundrum that always plagues fantasy gamers? You're going to play him. You're going to put him in because the ceiling for Deebo Samuel doesn't match the ceiling of Malik Neighbors, and the floors don't match either. So what are we doing? The probability that Deebo outscores Neighbors is probably like 15 to 20%.
I would agree with that, and I think the percentage is probably dead on as well. I am going to go to Tom Smith's question right now on YouTube. Matt Deutsch, our producer, by the way, shout out to him, who's pushing all the right buttons tonight, points out, all right, I want to point out to him, because he's seen these show rundowns in the past, Bradley. I have nothing on the Packers receivers tonight. Normally I put something about Watson or Dobbs or Reed or somebody or Wicks. Not tonight. But we do have a Jaden Reed point that Tom Smith is bringing up here. He's leaning towards sitting Jaden Reed this week. Jaden Reed last week against Detroit in a gotta-have-it game. 1 target. No rushes. No catches. I understand that the Packers would probably want to get him involved this week. But I also understand they had plenty of opportunities to manufacture plays for him last week, and it didn't happen. And Romeo Dobbs has in 2 full practices this week already. Still in concussion protocol, but 2 full practices. Luke Musgrave, by the way, is practicing this week as well. As if there weren't enough peppers in the Packers gumbo, he could be thrown back in there too if he comes off IR this week. Listen, Tom is a really good fantasy player. I know he's got other good options at receiver. I'd love to hear him. But if you want to make the case for sitting Jaden Reed this week, I know I'm a weak man. I wouldn't be able to do it, but I certainly understand the case for sitting Jaden Reed this week. I don't know how bullish or bearish you are on him this week, Bradley.
Yeah, I was out on Jaden Reed at the beginning of the year, and I looked foolish to start because he had a couple very big games to begin the season, and then it's just petered off. Like I feel redeemed a little bit because of that take. Right now, I have Jaden Reed outside the top 40 of wide receivers, so you're probably finding someone else. DeAndre Hopkins, Josh Downs, if he returns this week, even Elijah Moore due to the passing volume. That's like those players above Jaden Reed right now. Heck, I'll give you a deep cut. Xavier Legette. How about Xavier Legette over Jaden Reed? Yeah, that's how far Jaden Reed has fallen. And you mentioned all of the pieces coming back. The reality is that Jaden Reed is one of the highest upside players, but we know that the floor is scarier than all of the other high upside players that he can match ceiling wise. So yeah, it's disaster zone for those who needed Jaden Reed in week 14 to give you anything.
Juan Pena Jr., I appreciate your question. We can't get the full scope of it. So I'm going to tell you this right now. The way I look at that team, I would be playing Juwan Jennings as my second receiver. You would start Kyron Williams and one of those Seahawks running backs for your running backs. I'd go Kittle at tight end. Flex, I would lean towards probably Myers over Stevenson. But that's my best interpretation of that question. I want to get into Ray C., a longtime viewer of the show from YouTube. I want to get his question in here. Please help me decide Isaac Guerrero tonight or Tony Pollard. This is PPR. Now, I want to bring this up before we answer this question, Bradley, because I believe Pollard has been missing some time this week. He did not practice yesterday. He did not practice today. And now you have to make a decision tonight if you're Ray. Okay, I don't know what's going on with Tony Pollard. My best option is Isaac Guerrero tonight. I think you almost have to play Guerrero knowing that he's going to be out there, and we just don't know what's going on with Pollard right now.
Yeah, that's a tough spot with multiple DNPs and an ankle injury near the end of the season. Like, it's a good matchup for Tony Pollard if he plays, but you also don't know who you have on the waiver wire. Like, if you've got a plug and play type of running back, I don't know who else you have on your bench either. Like, if it's just Guerrero or if you have a Charbonnet or if you have someone else. But if there's no one else, then you should go with Guerrero. That's how you handle that.
Yeah, I just don't see another way. Like you got to know, Ray, who's available to you, and if you can elongate this decision where you can bypass Guerrero tonight, where you have a capable guy to sit in for Pollard if Pollard doesn't go, because we just don't know a whole lot about it right now. Then do that. If you don't, then it's got to be Guerrero.
The Guerrero ceiling is top 5 for the week. We'll talk more about it, but also the floor is running back 40. Running back 50, like he could get hurt again. He could aggravate something. That's what we've seen from the running backs in the Kyle Shanahan offense. Christian McCaffrey, Jordan Mason, but let's not forget Elijah Mitchell was injured this offseason as well. So we're 4 deep, and Patrick Taylor is capable enough. Izzy Abanikanda is waiting in the wings. Like, the floor is scarier for Garendo, but we know what the ceiling is if he gets the full workload.
I want to get to just because we were just talking about both Jaden Reed and Deebo Samuel. Mr. Bakes a lot. Jaden Reed or Deebo Samuel, full PPR. I guess I lean towards Reed here, but Bradley, I don't have a feel. I don't have a good feel on this between Reed and Samuel. Do you?
I'd go Samuel. I still would go Samuel there. I think the floor is just slightly higher with him, and given the reinforcements for Green Bay that are coming back, I'd still lean Deebo Samuel.
You're going Deebo Samuel there. I say Reed. I don't feel great about it. Bradley's an expert ranker, so I'll just leave it out there. Isaac Garendo or Ray McLeod, full PPR. I think I might go McLeod here over Garendo, which seems sinful because Garendo should, in theory, get a big workload tonight. But Ray McLeod, for whatever reason, continues to be heavily involved in that Falcons offense. I think I'd play McLeod here.
Really interesting.
Yeah. Yep.
You know, what's interesting about that call is McLeod 3 straight games of at least 6 targets, 8 receptions for 98 yards on 11 targets last week, and he had a rush attempt, so 9 total touches in that game, but was still. Let's pull up the PPR. I have to do the rankings in half PPR, so I have to shift the mindset. But He was still only wide receiver 21 with all of that workload. I don't think he's a goal line option. I would rather go with Garendo, even though I don't hate the call to flex McLeod. I don't hate it, Eric, but okay. I'd still lean Garendo.
I know it's aggressive. It's aggressive to play McLeod over a guy who, again, in theory, should get 15 to 20 touches tonight for a team at home in what should be a tight game. So I get it. Tom Smith, I get it. CeeDee Lamb, Cooper Kupp, Juwan Jennings. Yeah, I like all those guys significantly better than Jaden Reed for sure this week. And he's also got Brian Thomas on the bench. Hell of a team. That's why you're 36th overall in the FFPC main event. Congrats to you on that. Let's see. I think that is yes. Yep. Let's go back to the rundown here and talk about David Njoku, who did not practice today and is expected to miss the game this week for Cleveland, which stinks for people who had Njoku on their team because he has been one of the better tight ends this year. And once again, a year that has been wrought with peril and injury and non-performance for a lot of the top-end tight ends. And now we know Njoku is not going to be playing at home when they host the world champs, Kansas City. What does this mean, Bradley? No Njoku. I don't want to mess around with the other Browns tight ends. Does it mean anything for Tillman? Does it mean anything for Elijah Moore, for Jerry Jeudy? Are you bumping any of these guys up significantly, knowing that Njoku, who was getting a lot of targets, is not going to be in action for Jameis Winston?
Yeah, you want to bump up the Elijah Moore's, Jerry Jeudy's of the world. Cedric Tillman, you're probably flexing. It's unfortunate for David Njoku. It's unfortunate for all of our fantasy teams because he's been playing so well, getting the red zone, end zone targets that we love to see. The other part is it's unfortunate for our fantasy teams because we probably got to this spot with David Njoku. Like one of my fantasy teams, $100 entry, 32-team league, and David Njoku is my tight end. I have to plug in a Tucker Fisk.
It's like the worst thing that you can do in week 15, right? You're playing a guy who the better boss, our producer Matt Deutsch, saying who, and I just thought you had sneezed. I didn't realize that was an actual name. Tucker Fisk.
He is one of the Chargers tight ends.
Yes, yeah, one of the Chargers tight ends that is.
He's been averaging between 35 and 45% snap share over the last 4 weeks.
It's one of those things where you're playing in a 32-team league. You are facing real life NFL problems. Like when your guy goes down, this is what you have to deal with, you know?
So when David Njoku is out, right, you got to dig deep off the 32-team waiver wire to find someone with a pulse.
Right.
And unfortunately, for those who are in like normally sized leagues, you're probably, throwing in, let me throw a couple names your way. Like an interesting deep streamer is Grant Calcaterra,
Sure.
right? You're interested in that. Certainly, Noah Gray has been a nice tight end for us on and off over the last few weeks. Um, if you want another LA Chargers receiving tight end, Stone Smart has been getting some targets in that Chargers offense. So just if you're really digging deep for some tight ends, those are some names to keep in mind.
The pride of the Stanford Cardinal, Tucker Fisk, graduated there in 2021, went undrafted in 2022, spent a couple years with the Falcons, and is now with the Chargers. I guarantee you the fact that we spent 2 minutes talking about this guy, he's probably going to go for
You,
3
Tucker.
touchdowns. Yeah, it's the new Tucker at tight end. It's not Tucker Kraft anymore. It's Tucker Fisk.
We love it.
I really, I don't even know. I really sing on Twitch right now. Shout out to the Twitch viewers. Wants to know Jonathan Taylor or Aaron Jones this week. I know there is some love for Aaron Jones given how high powered that Vikings offense looked last week. They get the Bears on Monday Night Football. Jonathan Taylor, meanwhile, this week the Colts are going to be up against the Broncos on the road, coming off. Were they on bye last week? The Colts? I think they were. They were on bye. Oh, the Broncos were on bye last week as well. So you have Jonathan Taylor, you have Aaron Jones. I lean towards Aaron Jones here. Higher upside, like the offense better, Bradley.
Yeah, Aaron Jones was limited on Thursday in a walkthrough due to a back. He's battled hip, hamstring, chest, rib issues throughout the season. We know, like, as Packers people, the fragility of Aaron Jones. At any moment, something could snap or break. Whether it's his sombrero or his
Hamstring.
his hamstring, anything in between. We know how fragile it is. But has there been a more disappointing second round pick that stayed healthy for most of the year than Jonathan Taylor?
I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, and the thing is like I've reevaluated my expectations week in and week out for him. I didn't like, quite frankly, Taylor coming into draft season. I have him in a couple of spots. I didn't like him because I don't like drafting the running back necessarily. This is a blanket statement that there are exceptions to the rule. I don't usually like drafting running backs on teams with mobile quarterbacks because I feel like you're giving up potential passing targets to the running back in favor of the quarterback just taking off and running, which Richardson can do. So I didn't have him in a lot of spots, but I feel like there's a limited ceiling there week in and week out. Now he gets the Broncos this week. I don't really see that this is the spot where he gets right.
Yeah, we need to, especially during the offseason, there was a lot of love for how good Anthony Richardson could be, but there's also needs to be a real conversation of what is the floor for the Indianapolis Colts offense overall. And the floor is extremely scary when he's only completing 45% of passes. And that's really stifling drives, not getting the volume for Jonathan Taylor, limiting the opportunity. The offensive line is not as good as it once was. So realistically, there's a lot of needs that this Indianapolis Colts team is going to enter 2025 needing to address, not just like elevating and growing their quarterback, but also anything. Who is their tight end? Who is the wide receiver? Alec Pierce has had some nice games, but he's not been consistent. Michael Pittman has been the pits.
Yeah. And Downs has been down for a good part of the season too.
All these puns, the
exactly.
Indianapolis puns.
And Anthony Richardson's been playing more like Anthony Poorson for the majority of the season as well. I think Downs and Pittman is probably their future there. I think Pierce is like a nice third guy, but these guys got to stay healthy. Pittman's been dealing with some stuff this year. They do have a gaping hole at tight end. They do need to fix that as well. Speaking of Josh Downs, he practiced today, Bradley.
Yes.
Would you feel okay about flexing him out in an FFPC championship round this weekend?
Oh, right. Out of the bye
against Denver at the Mile High City as well.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I don't feel comfortable or confident doing it. Like Downs is probably, once my rankings settle, somewhere in the wide receiver 36 to 45 range. So not a ton of confidence in Josh Downs coming out. I would have preferred Joe Flacco. Like if we're looking from a fantasy perspective, that makes me feel more comfortable that the passing volume is going to be there, the receptions are going to be there, because Downs isn't going to make his fantasy living as a touchdown scorer, as a red zone threat. He's going to make it as I got 8 for 50. Like the PPR numbers are going to be there. So unfortunately, when the volume bottoms out, Josh Downs has nothing else to lean on.
I'm with you. I think I would not feel great in the opening. This is the type of play that you make if you are chasing 100, 200 teams in the Fantasy Pros Championship, in the FFPC main event in week 16 or week 17. This is not a week 15 move. Keep them on the bench. Go with somebody else. Couple other questions here. We'll go to Tom Smith, Jacoby Myers, or Isaac Guerrero. Miguel was giving me a hard time about that Ray McLeod call. I get it, Miguel. It's not conventional thinking. He's thinking it's bad advice. I don't know if it's necessarily bad advice, just a gut feeling on my part. He's saying, I'm going to say play Guerrero over Jacoby Myers. I am not saying that at all. It's going to be Jacoby Myers over Isaac Guerrero tonight for me.
Yeah, in full PPR, Myers gets volume. It's Myers and Bowers. That's it in terms of the receiving work for the Las Vegas Raiders. And Jacoby Myers is a respectable player. Let's put some respect on his name. He deserves to be. He's always been undervalued. I've been touting him as the next Tyler Lockett for the last couple of years. That he's just undervalued, always a round 9, round 10 guy. It's going to be a consistent PPR flex producer. And but with Guerrero, oh man, the upside for Guerrero is so tantalizing. That's the hard thing. The pathway for Jacoby Myers to be a top 10 wide receiver on a week is very bleak. The pathway because it's Desmond Ridder who's throwing the ball, or who's the backup quarterback now for the Vegas Raiders. His last name is Bradley, I'm pretty sure.
Okay. Well, that's how you know it then. It's sticking in your mind.
Carter Bradley. There you go. Some deep cuts here on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Show.
The pride of South Alabama. Did not realize this. How about that? Now we do have Aiden O'Connell is saying he's hoping to play this week against Atlanta, and Bob Harris from Football Guys was saying I'm not going to give him too much guff for having a knee bruise in an air cast being left when he left the field, because so many other people have been giving him so much guff for that. Listen, they don't know. They're just being cautious. But O'Connell could play. We'll see on this. I want to bring this up. LeBron's on YouTube. This one I'd sit there is Breece Hall, because I'm not. I'm pretty sure he's not playing. Bradley, you have any hopes that Breece Hall is playing this week? No.
Not this week. I would be surprised if he plays at all during the fantasy playoffs. I know Stefania Bell came out and wrote an article about the prospects of Breece Hall returning, and she offered at least this perspective, and I wanted to share this with the listeners and viewers, that there is player pride in terms of finishing a season. And so the perspective that she wanted to offer is that sometimes players want to finish the last couple games because they know that they'll finish the season. They can tip their cap to that. Mm-hmm. And that ends the season with some confidence going into the offseason that, okay, I had some nicks, I had some bruises, but I was able to make it through. And that's a confidence booster from the mental perspective of an athlete trying to recover from not just an injury, but if we remember a couple of years ago, Breece Hall also tore his ACL. So there's this lingering, like, is my knee going to hold up thought?
Yep.
And so will he play this week? I don't think so. Next week, probably a coin flip. There's probably the best chance is week 17 or 18. And week 17, are you going to trust Breece Hall in a championship week when you haven't played him for 2 weeks? I think the answer is no. He'd still be on the bench, even if he's active. And you're not going to play. We're not in week 18 almost anywhere. So yeah, I don't envision Breece Hall being useful during the fantasy playoffs, though.
I think to Stefania Bell's point, we see this in baseball a lot, where these pitchers or hitters, or mostly pitchers, but where they miss a good chunk of the year, they come back to nothing. Their team's out of contention, but they still want to make a couple of starts in September. Why? Because you get that mental monkey off your back, right? Because you know you already came back, and now you don't have to sit an entire offseason wondering, okay, do I still have it? Is it going to be weird when I come back? Because you already did it. In the NFL, it's a little bit different. One, it's the same because all these guys can be cut and have their contracts adjusted so fast because the league moves a lot faster than Major League Baseball or anything like that. However, the Jets, who obviously want to make a run next year, hopefully, they don't really want to put Breece Hall in harm's way. I think it's interesting that they spent a couple of draft picks on both Braylon Allen and Isaiah Davis, knowing that Breece Hall was coming off this knee injury. Maybe I'm reading too much into that, but maybe there's something there. I also think they want to see a little bit more what they have in Allen, and especially Isaiah Davis, who's found the end zone the last couple of weeks too. They can't make the playoffs. You might as well season these guys for next year as well. Okay, we are falling behind on questions here, and I do apologize for that. I promise you we'll get to as many as we can. Okay, let's go to Unwary Mite on Twitch. Kareem Hunt, Isaiah Pacheco, or Najee Harris. This comes down to the starting Chiefs running back, which I think is going to be Pacheco or Najee Harris. I give a slight nod to Pacheco against the Browns over Najee Harris in the battle for Pennsylvania this week when he travels to Philly. How do you feel about it, Bradley?
I think they're still cannibalizing each other. The Kareem Hunt, Isaiah Pacheco, backfield. So give me Najee Harris. He's still a top 24 running back. He's been falling in the end zone as of late. The efficiency is almost never there for Najee, but, I would rather just take the main guy in the backfield than the two cannibals.
That's a good point.
Jaylen Warren is not eating in like how many in the offseason had projected that, Jaylen Warren's going to take over the backfield. No, Jaylen Warren is a nice complementary piece, and he's got some dynamism, but Najee Harris is the main man here in the Pittsburgh backfield.
Let's go to Mr. Bakes-A-Lot again. We talked about both these players fairly extensively, maybe not so much Braylon Allen, but assuming Breece Hall is out again, would you play Braylon Allen over Jonathan Taylor? Would you sit Taylor in favor of Allen? My answer to this is kind of what you just said about the Chiefs running back situation. Isaiah Davis is eating in to what we thought was going to be a smash week for Braylon Allen last week. Didn't happen. And now am I going to sit the guy who should get all the volume in the Colts backfield and Jonathan Taylor in favor of Allen? I can't do that. Even though I think it's a pretty good matchup against the Jaguars, I'm still playing Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah, you're playing Jonathan Taylor, but Eric, if you were listening to my content last week, I was pumping Isaiah Davis.
Yes, you were.
He was a top 30 running back for me. I ranked number 3 among Fantasy Pros rankers and running back rankings last week, mostly due to the bullishness that I had for Isaiah Davis because of his route running. Like the argument for Isaiah Davis was Breece Hall was already earning a 13% target share. Most of that was going to go to Isaiah Davis, who was running routes when Breece Hall was limited late in the season. So we had already seen Isaiah Davis get in the end zone. We saw it again happen in week 14. So you mentioned the cannibalism, but everyone should have been higher on Isaiah Davis. And so, in fact, the player profiler rankings that I work on. So for those who don't know, like one of the things I do at Player Profiler, I am on the projections team and help with the rankings there. And we have Isaiah Davis even ahead of Braylon Allen for this week. Yeah.
Spicy. I love it. And but that's, when you have the value of a guy who is a talented pass catcher sharing the same backfield as a guy who maybe doesn't have the same track record catching the ball, you should be leaning more on the pass catching running back in this type of format, which is what you guys are doing. And I think it's smart. Yeah. Even though I'm wearing my Bucky Badger, Braylon Allen,
Go Badgers,
Wisconsin hat tonight. But I've been equally kind of frying Isaac Guerendo a little bit tonight, a former Badger and Louisville Cardinal. But listen, I got love for both of them for sure. Let's do this one. Rolltron. This is a good FFPC main event championship round question. Rolltron has Brock Purdy, George Kittle, and Deebo Samuel, the triple stack for the Niners. Should he bench? Should he keep that stack going? Or should he bench Deebo Samuel for a guy like Aaron Jones, for a guy like Bucky Irving? Bucky Irving, we don't know if he's going to play. But I would bench Samuel for Aaron Jones. I love stacking as much as the next guy. But in this situation, I think you're getting too cute. I don't think you again, this is a move you make in week 17 when you're trying to fly up 200 spots on the leaderboard. I don't think you do it this week. I think you play Aaron Jones over Deebo Samuel, even though you have Kittle and Purdy. Go with the guy who's been producing. Jones has been producing. Deebo Samuel has not been.
Upvote, retweet. Eric, you got it.
L Smith 18 on YouTube. Thank you for all the flashing red lights in this question. That's what caught my attention because this is an emergency question, yo. L Smith 18. Pick 2 wide receivers in a flex, full PPR. By the way, this is not an emergency question because this is one hell of a team that L Smith 18 has put together here. Cooper Kupp, Malik Neighbors, Nico Collins, James Conner, Josh Jacobs, Tyreek Hill, and Mike Evans. He's got to pick 3 guys out of there. Okay, so I look at it this way. I'm playing Evans. God, no, I'm not. Now, maybe I am. I think full PP. God, this is tough. I look at this initially, I'm like, okay, it's Evans, it's Kupp, and it's Collins. And you sit the rest of those guys. But that means I'm sitting Tyreek Hill and Josh Jacobs. I don't know. Do you have a good feel on this one?
You're definitely playing Nico Collins. You're definitely playing Mike Evans.
Evans, who, by the way, is dealing with a hamstring injury. No, I don't think he did not practice today. And that game is a late game, which gets a little bit dicey then.
He usually plays through those things. I'm not worried right now. We'll continue to monitor that. Josh Jacobs, though, is the other. So you're playing Nico Collins, Josh Jacobs, Mike Evans. And then if Evans is not available,
you do
James
have
Conner.
James Conner is the pivot there. Yeah. Or Josh. Actually, so are you saying play Josh Jacobs?
Yeah, you're playing Nico Collins and Josh Jacobs.
Okay, so you're not playing Cooper Kupp tonight?
Nope.
Oh, wow. Why do you hate Cooper Kupp, Bradley?
Oh. Well,
no,
do you want to dive down that?
No, we're not going to do that. We're not going to do that.
Not yet.
No, not yet. Maybe later. Maybe in the second hour we might get into that. Garendo or Bucky Irving if playing, or DJ Moore wants JTube on YouTube wants to know this. This is an interesting one. So, when you have to decide between those 3 players, would you sit Garendo tonight and then just play Bucky Irving or DJ Moore? You'll have the option of knowing whether Bucky Irving is active or not, because if he doesn't, DJ Moore plays on Monday night. So would you sit Garendo and make the decision later?
Yeah, let's roll with DJ Moore. This game could end up in a big shootout, and so we want the lead pass catcher. Like, I'm a big believer that DJ Moore is the best wide receiver on the Bears, and Caleb Williams has definitely shown that since the firing of Eberflus and the elevation of Thomas to offensive coordinator and now head coach, that the yards are there, the touchdowns will get there. And DJ Moore is just the most talented guy overall. Like, Rome Odunze got the 2 touchdowns last week. Keenan Allen got it before, but DJ Moore has been the most consistent player on that team. He's the wide receiver 18 right now for me. So,
by the way, L Smith 18, Derrick Henry and Bijan Robinson on that team as well. Oof. One of 2 things is true here. You either need to get into a more competitive league, or you need to be playing in the Fantasy Pros Championship.
You need to increase your stakes, baby.
Yeah, because you could be winning some serious. Maybe he's already winning serious cash. I don't know, but maybe he could win more if he joins the main event or the Fantasy Pros Championship next year. DeVonta Smith, 4 catches, 6 targets for 37 yards and a touchdown against the Panthers. The AJ Brown, Jalen Hurts thing is well known. DeVonta Smith obviously is not the outcome you wanted. The touchdowns is nice, but it kind of saved a bad week for him. Are you worried at all about DeVonta Smith against the Steelers this week?
No, those games can turn into shootouts real quick too. Like, we saw that with Cincinnati and Pittsburgh a couple weeks ago. The game could get out of hand in terms of going over the game total projection for that week. So I'm not too worried in terms of that, because the over under for this game I know is 43, which is an easy over. I feel like Dallas Goedert's out. You're just going to have highs and lows with DeVonta Smith. Same with AJ Brown. Like, let's just write it off. We're not too worried. We'll fire him up. I understand the eyebrow raises, but here's the perspective I want to offer to the audience. And I tell this often. Usually in the off season, when we're talking about philosophy of wide receivers, that the best wide receivers in the NFL end up only giving you flex-worthy games or better 60% of the time. Like they will bust 30 to 40, the best ones will bust 33 to 40% of the time. And that's like bare minimum. The top 15 wide receivers are a coin flip, of whether they bust or not. So I want everyone to like keep that in mind. It's very difficult you could have the right game environment. You could have the right wide receiver cornerback matchup. You could have the right weather. You could have the right everything, game script. You could have all the things in line, and it just doesn't work, So there's so many factors that go into what it takes for a wide receiver to be successful. Accuracy of the quarterback, downfield throws, maybe it's luck falling in the end zone, red zone targets, lots of it. So yeah, the reality is like these wide receivers, they bust often, and we just have to live with it sometimes.
We do. And it's they're not touching the ball every play. And when you're not touching the ball every play, or you're not the guy on every, passing play like a running back is on a running play, you run that risk. And that's what happens. I'm glad we have some stats behind it now, so I understand it better as well. LeBron's also wants to know, Jerry Jeudy is starting for him right now. Should he take him out and put Isaac Guerendo in tonight? Who would you rather play between Jeudy and Guerendo?
Yeah, you got to fire up Jerry Jeudy. He's third in the NFL in receiving yards. He's been the wide receiver 3 overall since Jameis Winston's taken over. David Njoku doesn't play. Like there are so many pathways for Jerry Jeudy to massively hit in a similar way that Isaac Guerendo could, but the floor I think is much higher for a Jerry Jeudy floor flex game than Isaac Guerendo getting hurt or Patrick Taylor getting majority of snaps or some pathway for Guerendo to fail tonight.
Jerry Jeudy, since week 8, has gotten at least 5 catches and either 70-plus yards or a touchdown every single game since week 8. The floor is there. The ceiling is there with games of 142 receiving yards. Oh, and that ho-hum 235 he had against the Broncos on Monday Night Football. Let's get to a couple more questions here. Let's see here. John Carbone. Kyler Murray or Russell Wilson? Let's do that one right now. Kyler Murray, this is a fun one to do too with these two quarterbacks. Kyler Murray is at home against the Patriots. Russell Wilson, we already said, is going to be going up against the Eagles. I know Wilson's been turning it on. He's looked good. I love watching him on Hard Knocks these last couple of weeks too. It's been fun seeing what the Steelers have been able to do. The legs of Kyler Murray, the upside of Kyler Murray, and the matchup, I think, trumps it. So I like Murray over Wilson here.
Yeah, Murray is in my top 10. Russ is outside my top 20 in these weeks, right? So it's a very large disparity in terms of both projections and then like personal rankings too. So yeah, it's Kyler Murray.
He also asked this too. Should he stick with TJ Hawkinson at tight end, or should he swing with Zach Ertz or Evan Engram? Now, Evan Engram has missed 2 consecutive practices this week. I don't know if he's going to play. Now, the great thing about this is none of these guys are playing Thursday night, so you can wait on this decision, see if Engram practices tomorrow. But Bradley, even if he does, I don't think I could do it. I think I'd rather play Hawkinson. The way that Sam Darnold's throwing the ball right now, getting the ball to everybody on that offense, that getting a piece of that right now against the Bears on Monday night, yeah, give me that over Engram. Give me that over Zach Ertz.
Yeah, last time that the Vikings and Chicago Bears faced off, 7 for 114 for TJ Hawkinson. Mm-hmm. It's because they bracketed Justin Jefferson. The pathway to try to beat the Vikings by the Bears last time was bracket up Jefferson. That's where you got your 160-yard game from Jordan Addison. That's where you got your 114-yard game from TJ Hawkinson. You're firing up TJ Hawkinson because the Bears can't block everybody.
Right. Yeah, I mean, like, I think, and I should look at the total on that game because I remember I looked at it before and I thought, well, it's only 43.5. I thought it was higher than that. Oh, it did open up at 46. So that has fallen a little bit. But I do think that that, again, you don't want to get too cute. You want to dance with who brung you, and I guess probably Engram had brung you here because Hawkinson missed most of the season, but he represents the highest upside and the highest floor for me in this situation. So that's why I go with Hawkinson. We've got a ton more to get to. We do need to step out and take a break. When we come back, we're going to answer. Mr. Bakes-A-Lot has a question. We got another one from Delaire22 on Twitch. We're going to go with Stephen Grease. We're going to get his question in. So if you have a question out there, we will answer it when we come back. It's our Thursday Night Football preview. Bradley Stalder from Player Profiler joining me tonight on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Show presented by the FFPC. We'll get to those questions. Deebo Samuel. We'll get into Cooper Kupp. Talk about Isaac Guerrero more because we haven't done it enough yet. Plenty more to come on the HSFF show on the Better Sports Network. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. You talk about utilizing something called perpetual reloading to ensure something called a permanent championship window with FFPC Dynasty Leagues. How do we make sure that perpetual reloading is what we're doing in our rookie drafts every year to make sure that we're always competing for titles year in and year out?
Yeah, so we always have this tension between playing a little bit for the future and playing for the present. You'll have drafters jump into the startup. They'll draft the veterans. They're trying to win in that first year. Sometimes they do. I don't want to in any way, shape, or form suggest that that doesn't work because you see some of those teams compete and win titles. And yet, when we're thinking about the best way to control your chances to win, you want to be in the playoffs year after year. You want your championship window to always be open. You don't want to get to a point where you build, and then have a couple of years where you're going for it and then you're rebuilding again. You want to be in it every year. You want to get as many buys as possible so you don't have to compete in that quarterfinal round. You build a more powerful team. You can't control the injury that you have to the key player that cost you a title or the 50-point game that a non-elite player like an Amari Cooper scores and knocks you out. You can control having one of the best teams every single season. The way that you do that is you build depth in your player talent across all those positions. You build depth in your picks. In order to execute some of those types of things, you trade down, you trade peak players, you trade young players. You've got to trade things that people want. A lot of times I think when people are trying to reload or rebuild, they're trying to trade distressed assets at a level that the rest of the group isn't interested in. And then you feel like you can't move. If you're going to make trades, you got to trade things that people want. You can also
Welcome back to the High Stakes Fantasy Football Show here on the Better Sports Network, presented by the Fantasy Football Players Championship. I'm Eric Balkman. He's Bradley Stalder from Player Profiler. You know him from Stack Hunters, and you know him from Man vs. Machine with Ryan Reynolds. I did want to ask you, as long as we're talking about Stack Hunters, you talked about Tyler Lockett. Is Dan Williamson, your co-host there, willing to make the shift to Jacoby Myers and move off of Tyler Lockett in 2025, or is he still not there yet?
Look, I'm pining Dan. I'm working on him. It's a work in progress. You know, there's a saying about dogs and tricks, right? So we're working on it. We're working on it, Eric.
The other thing that you can work on as viewers tonight is going to myffpc.com to play in the FFPC Weekly Challenge. Remember, there's no draft or salary cap, 10 or 12 player lineups if you want to play with kickers and defenses, or if you want to play without. 35 or 200 to enter, and you can win up to $2,500 this weekend. 10, 30, or 100 team contests. Remember, you can just go to myffpc.com or scan the QR code that Matt Deutsch has put up on the screen right here. No, over this way. Right here, right underneath Bradley there. That's where you want to scan. That will take you right to the registration page. MyFFPC.com is where to go for that. And Bradley has put together an FFPC Weekly Challenge team that we'll get to in just a few minutes here. Our Thursday Night Football preview will start kind of weirdly tonight because we got a lot of Niners questions. Obviously, everybody, first week of the fantasy playoffs, FFPC main event championship round, Fantasy Pros championship round. Everybody wants to get these right, so I'll go through these as best I can and try to get to all of them here. We'll kick things off with let's see here. I don't think we did this one. Mr. Bakes-A-Lot wants to know Braylon Allen or Deebo Samuel. We assume Breece Hall misses. We assume Deebo Samuel will probably get a little bit more work tonight with Guerrero as the starting running back. Maybe not. In this case, would you play Braylon Allen over Deebo Samuel? How do you feel about this? I'm guessing you're saying Samuel because I know what a big Isaiah Davis fan you are.
Still Braylon Allen, though. Like, Braylon Allen is a good running back, and he got comparable volume to Isaiah Davis. It's just that Davis was getting more of the passing work, but the goal line work, probably still going to go to Braylon Allen. Just so happened that it didn't fall in the end zone there. I am in favor of we got inactives. Izzy Banakanda officially out for Thursday night. But yes, I am. I'm firing up Braylon Allen over Deebo Samuel.
What about this one? I mean, we talked about how we're kind of down on Jaden Reed this week, and we got a question from Mr. Bakes a lot here. Jaden Reed or Marvin Mims? This is full PPR. Yeah, I know Marvin Mims he was on bye last week. 3 for 105 and a touchdown on Monday night, but that was like a 90-yard catch, a touchdown catch that was involved in there too. He hasn't topped 50 yards all season, but the upside's too big with Jaden Reed. I can't play Mims over Reed this week.
Can't do it either. I get it though.
Yeah.
But the volume has never been there for Marvin Mims. The volume could get there for Jaden Reed.
Yeah.
It's a zero. Yeah, Marvin Mims is what 8-10% target share. Like, Jaden Reed is usually going to get an 18%. He's usually going to get double the targets.
I look at that Dolphins game too on Thanksgiving night where I think Reed only had like 3 catches, but 2 of them were for touchdowns, and they were both like inside the 10-yard line. So they're inside the 5 or whatever it was. So they are looking to him down there. It's frustrating to see what he did against Detroit, but we've already seen it with Reed. I haven't seen it enough from Mims. Quarterback question from Delaire22 on Twitch. This is one where he'll have to make a decision tonight. He or she, I should say. Tonight, Brock Purdy at home against the Rams or Kyler Murray at home against the Patriots. Bradley, where do you fall in on this one?
Oh, that's a tough one because they're very close in the rankings. In fact, in my Fantasy Pros rankings, I have Purdy at 8 right now and Kyler Murray at 7. So it's one of those coin flip scenarios where they're so close. Like, I get it. It's one of like a back-to-back ranking whenever you have it that way. Like, my rankings say I would play Murray over Purdy, but I wouldn't blame you if you went Purdy. You want some exposure to this game. The Kittle touchdowns are very much in play because I have Kittle ranked as my tight end 1 for this week overall. So we want George Kittle, Brock Purdy, that connection. That's the stack I'm targeting. So give me Kyler Murray though. Just a lot more pathways for a Kyler Murray. The passing yards, the rushing touchdowns, just a greater path to success. Whereas it could be an Isaac Guerrero game that bottoms out Purdy.
The total on the game tonight is 48.5, so it's a higher total. The Cardinals one is 46.5, so still somewhat high. And I do see, I'm with you. Like, I can visualize more ways that Kyler Murray ends up being the right start over Purdy this week. So I'm with you on that. Stephen Grease on YouTube, he's got another pretty good team here. In at wide receiver, well, here's his starters right now. He's got Jamar Chase, Juwan Jennings, Chase Brown, Josh Jacobs, AJ Brown, and Rico Dowdle starting. Should he sit any of those guys in favor of, I'm going to throw out George Pickens because I don't think he plays. Najee Harris, I'll eliminate just because I don't like him as good as those other guys. And then James Cook and Ladd McConkey, I think is what it comes down to. McConkey, we don't know if he's going to play. That is a 425 game, so we may not know. I think the question here is do we like James Cook enough to play him in a total of 56.5 against the Lions over Rico Dowdle, who granted had a good Monday night game and has a good matchup against the Panthers this week, but it's Rico Dowdle and it's James Cook. The draft pedigree would suggest that you play James Cook over Dowdle. That's what this one comes down to for me here.
Rico Dowdle is one of the highest projected, if you look across the sports books, one of the highest projected rushing yard totals that you can bet on this week. He's right now probably a top 10 running back in the NFL for fantasy purposes, which I was touting in the offseason. I said they're the only running back with juice in that backfield is Rico Dowdle, and it's a question of whether he's going to get the full workload. And well, in the second half of the season, the Dallas Cowboys have given Rico Dowdle the keys of the kingdom, and he's delivered for us for fantasy. So give me Rico Dowdle.
And nobody else, right? Like, you would leave the starting lineup as he has it there. You wouldn't be putting in James Cook or McConkey over, Dowdle or AJ Brown, Josh Jacobs, Chase Brown.
The question about I was thinking about McConkey, but Justin Herbert also dealing with a pretty significant ankle injury that limited him in practice. He might not have even practiced. It was that bad.
He practiced. He returned to practice today. I can tell you that. But I think to your point, I think was limited. Yeah.
Yeah. So the concern is that there may not be, even if all the dominoes align, like you need best case scenario for it to outproduce Rico Dowdle, and you just go with the volume running back that's produced before. Like, we're not overthinking it.
DS Pareca on Twitch, Deebo Samuel or Cooper Kupp. Sounds like a crazy question, but maybe not. Nah, I think it is crazy. I can't sit Cooper Kupp in favor of Deebo Samuel. Yeah, you're going to go with Kupp here. D Real on YouTube, Mahomes or Stafford. Now, this is full PPR. I don't know. Does that matter for Stafford and Mahomes? Have they been running these weird plays where the quarterback's catching? I don't know. But he wants to know Mahomes or Stafford. And I think this is interesting for Mahomes. But when I think it's more interesting if it's like Bo Nix or Purdy or Darnold or Jaden Daniels or somebody like that. It gets less interesting with Stafford. I'm going to go with Patrick Mahomes here over Stafford.
Yeah, it's Mahomes over Stafford for me in my rankings as well. Look, the only reason we're having this conversation is because of how bad Mahomes has been this year. What did I put in the notes? I said that he's been 17. Patrick Mahomes this year has finished quarterback 17 or worse in 3 of the last 4 games and only has 2 top 5 weeks on the season. Yeah. So the reason why we're having this conversation of Mahomes Stafford is not because Stafford's been doing really well, but Stafford has been doing pretty well lately. Yeah. It's been because Mahomes has not been playing very well.
Let's see here tonight. Lawless Killer 89 on Twitch. Who's winning tonight? Real simple question here. Rams or Niners? This game is being played at the Big Denim, as I call it, in Santa Clara at Levi Stadium. The Niners are a 3-point favorite. Gun to my head, I guess I'm going to take the Niners, but man, I think this is more of a coin flip game. I could easily see the Rams winning this one.
So one of the things for those who are like not familiar with points spread or game total, those types of things, if the home team almost automatically gets +3, they get the field goal advantage in how these things are set up. So Balky, you're exactly right that this is a coin flip type of game in terms of adjusted for home field advantage outside of that. So I'm looking at what has happened lately, and it is that the Rams have been a little more hot lately. They've got the full complement of Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp. They got into this shootout with the Bills, and what happened? Well, Puka had legacy game, and they're going to continue to ride Puka Nacua, who is right now proving to be the better wide receiver. He can do it all. Like, Kupp looks a little bit slower and doesn't come down with all of the catches that he used to come down with. So, but it's still Puka Nacua who's phenomenal. Purdy is an average quarterback. Stafford can make plays. He's the veteran, the wily veteran. The positive I see for San Francisco is they're getting Bosa back.
Yeah.
They're getting Bosa back, and that may tilt it, at least in terms of like evening things out. So a coin flip, who's going to win? Give me the Rams +3.
There you go. Yeah. And that's the thing, right? So it's like, who's going to win the game? And when you and I are both viewing this as more of a coin flip, yeah, we're taking the points tonight. This should be a good game. It'll be a fun one tonight for sure. Trevor Hinnigan, congratulations to him. He is sitting about 2,000th place in the sprint. So congratulations to getting to the sprint. What do you do now? Keenan Allen Monday night at the Vikings or Deebo Samuel tonight at home against the Rams? I lean towards Samuel here.
Really interesting.
Yeah. The thing that worries me is, and maybe this is because I've been burned by the Bears offense so much this year. I always think, this is going to be the week. And then it almost never is the week. Sometimes it's been the week. Keenan Allen, if you look, and I can't remember who had this stat. Might have been Paul Charchian from Fantasy Life. I can't remember. I could be wrong on that. So I might be misattributing it. But Keenan Allen has had basically like 2 really good weeks this year. He had the 9 for 86 for a touchdown against the Vikings the first time they played.
Right.
And then in week 13, 2 weeks ago in Detroit, 5 for 73 and 2 touchdowns. That was the Thanksgiving game. Outside of that, dude, 3 for 30. 4 for 41, 5 for 44, 2 for 39, 4 for 36, 3 for 19. It's been a lot of nothing burgers here. So my concern with Keenan Allen is, by and large, if we are playing the odds, this should probably be another nothing burger game. Samuel, I'm not sure. Samuel has maybe the biggest opportunity he's had all season tonight against the Rams. So I lean towards Samuel. However, I can be persuaded to start Keenan Allen, and it sounds like, Bradley, that's what you're going to do.
Yeah, I prefer the Keenan Allen. I get that they're very, very close, but he's still getting the targets. And last week was the first week with Brown as the head coach. Okay, but what did Brown do in the previous weeks as offensive coordinator? Yeah, Keenan Allen, top 10 wide receiver in both weeks. So I'm not worried. It was at San Francisco. This is in a dome at Minnesota. We expect a big shootout game. Caleb Williams has proven that when he spikes, it can be a massive, massive game. So give me the player who's shown the biggest upside this year, and that's Keenan Allen, especially most recently.
I get it, and I would say that maybe upside wise, Keenan Allen's 2 games; those have got to be better than any games that Samuel's put up this year, right? I mean, I can't remember any big time breakout games that Samuel's had, so I totally get the argument there for sure, and I don't necessarily disagree with it. Ray is back with a question. Ray C on YouTube: Sam Darnold or Kyler Murray? You just talked up Kyler Murray a little bit. What if you compare him to Sam Darnold at home against the Bears? And Darnold, by the way, coming off a 5 touchdown game in a vintage Darnold performance.
Yeah, let me pull up the rankings here. Oh man, it's once again. You want to know how funny this is? I have it as Darnold Murray Purdy.
Of course, yeah. Well, these are the tough decisions, right?
Right.
These are the tough decisions.
So I do have Darnold at 6 for this week right now. You know, things slightly shift throughout the week, but like Purdy's going to settle at 8, and the argument for this game is that it's in a dome.
Mm-hmm.
These 2 offenses have a lot of potency. We've seen Minnesota get into shootouts. Like, yeah, Caleb Williams sling it. What else do we want to see? We want to see that. And who's going to go back and forth? The Chicago Bears defense has been pretty good, but there's some vulnerabilities in that secondary with some of the injuries they've experienced. So okay, Eric, I got a question for you. You've been asking me lots of questions.
Yeah.
Is Sam Darnold the MVP this year?
No. I'm not going to go that far. Sam Darnold has been awesome. Now, if you want to talk about fantasy MVP, I think there's a better argument for that. Fantasy MVP to me is never like these guys, these first rounders that show out. It's these potential league winners. And I wouldn't say Darnold's a league winner, but he's definitely closer to a league winner than like Josh Allen or something like that, where you had to give up almost nothing to draft Darnold. And expectations were so low with Darnold this year. So if you want to put him into the fantasy MVP conversation, I can get on board. League MVP, I still put Josh Allen in front of him. I still put Lamar Jackson in front of him. Saquon Barkley's in front of him. It's fun to talk about him in that conversation. I just don't think that he would get my vote here.
Interesting. I'll look, I'm trying to remove my Packers bias from this. I'm trying very hard to remove it because what a story. Like if you cross off the name Sam Darnold, the team is 11-2, right? Or what is it?
Yeah. 11-2.
Yeah, they're 11-2. They've proven every step of the way that they know how to win these games. And you're upholding Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison. They did it without TJ Hawkinson for most of the season. They overcame Christian Darrisaw being out for, the second half of the season. Massive loss in the offensive line. Like, if you cross off the name,
if you look at what he's done this year, he's had 2 games under 200 yards passing all season long. And he was still 179 and 181 in both of those games. And I believe, don't quote me on this, I think those are games he didn't need to pass because they were winning the games pretty handily. Has had a problem throwing picks this year. I think he's at 9 or 10, something like that. He's thrown a boatload of touchdowns though. So there's a lot to like about Darnold.
Is the quarterback on one of the best teams, and he's played pretty well. Like that's an argument for the MVP.
Absolutely. And it's not flawed logic on your part. It makes perfect sense. And I would never exclude him from the conversation. I think he's in the conversation. My thing is I think there are 3 guys who have been better than he has been this year. And they all happen to be on pretty good teams in Buffalo, Philadelphia, and Baltimore, right? So yeah, he's in the conversation. He's probably top 5. Quite frankly, I mean, if you look at the numbers, you look how good the team's been, he's probably top 5. He's higher on my list than Jared Goff, and that team's, 12-1 so right now, so it's been amazing to see what Darnold's. I look back to the start of during drafting season, and I'm like, I'm worried about how he's going to keep Justin Jefferson relevant, much less be a good fantasy quarterback. And the opposite's been true. Somebody in the chat, and I apologize, I missed it. I'm nervous about Jefferson this week. You're nervous about Jefferson this week? He's got Sam Darnold, potential MVP candidate. We should never be worried about Justin. And yet we are, because Justin Jefferson has been healthy and yet not performing up to the standards that we would hold him to as a first-round pick. Part of that's been Jordan Addison. Part of that's been Hawkinson. Part of that's been Darnold not having to lock into Jefferson because he's talented enough to go through his reads and get the ball to where the ball needs to go on that play.
Talk about career resurrection.
Totally. And Carolina, he was in San Francisco too. And Carolina's just got to be kicking themselves. And the Jets, of course, the Jets. Unbelievable. Bill Hollywood, Ramondre Stevenson or Sincere McCormick. He says he's leaning towards Sincere McCormick. I would be worried about McCormick, given that Madison, I think, has gotten in a couple of practices already, both yesterday and today. And I worry about how that's going to affect McCormick. Stevenson is sort of alone in that backfield. I think I'm going to play Stevenson over McCormick.
It is Stevenson over McCormick, but it's close. It's close. But I'm not as worried about Madison. Pierce came out and said that Sincere is the starting running back. He's earned it. He's played very, very well. Mm-hmm. And the Raiders have been like, they almost beat the Chiefs, Eric. They almost beat them.
Yeah.
And that's got to be, even though they lost, that's got to be a confidence booster. So, look, Sincere McCormick, you probably felt things in your body when you won the waiver wire bid for Sincere McCormick, right? You woke up at 3:05 a.m. Eastern time zone, and you saw that Sincere McCormick waiver bid went through. So look, it's probably going to be fun to play him, but at the same time, Ramondre Stevenson against Arizona. Yeah, I think we want that.
But McCormick, you're still happy about it just to see what happens the rest of the season. Raiders are out of it. Why would you not want to get a look at him? Why, you know what you have in Madison. You don't necessarily know what you have in McCormick yet. So somebody to keep around for sure. Permar99, longtime viewer of the show and others. Would you drop Israel Abanikanda or Marvin Mims for Hollywood Brown, who I believe is practicing? I thought I saw a report that he is practicing this week, could make his return here. Would you drop Abanikanda or Mims for him? I think I would. Definitely Mims for Hollywood Brown. Abanikanda would be second on that list, just because I don't know how this Niners backfield is going to go the remainder of the season.
Yeah, Abanikanda is not playing tonight. So the reality is like he's there on the depth chart already. So he would need multiple injuries to see Izzy see field. And Hollywood traditionally over his career has earned anywhere from a 17 to 25% target share. So yes, it's probably going to be a bit lower with the 15% that Xavier Worthy is getting and the 25% that Kelsey is getting and the 20% that DeAndre Hopkins is getting. And look, it's going to be a little bit lower, especially ramping up. But, if you're drafting right now for like a playoff contest, Hollywood Brown, very, very interesting. And maybe week 17, maybe he needs 2 weeks to ramp up. And then you can have some confidence. You're rostering him, but you're not playing him.
I look at the Chiefs and, I say they can't keep winning this way. These little tight games that they always seem to come out on top. And yet when it comes to the postseason, they're going to get Hollywood Brown back to join DeAndre Hopkins and Travis Kelce. They just got Isaiah Pacheco back to join Kareem Hunt. Noah Gray has been a thing on this team as well. And they have Xavier Worthy and Mahomes to boot. I mean, and the rush defense, God, everything is coming up Kansas City. I kind of hate it. But at the same time, I kind of like it because I would like to see some team win 3 Super Bowls in a row, just because we've never seen it before. And it'd be legendary if it happened. Okay, the last, Permar99, he has Younghoe Koo on his team. Should he drop Chris Boswell for Hollywood Brown? Yes, I would do that, especially if you can pick up a second kicker. If something happens to Koo through the remainder of the season where your waiver wire is not locked, then yeah, I would drop Boswell for Hollywood Brown.
Interesting. Boswell's like the leading kicker in the NFL, isn't he? In points scored, right?
Okay, well let me flip it around. Should he drop Koo for Hollywood Brown if he wants to keep Boswell instead?
Yeah, I'd rather keep Boswell.
Okay.
That's how I would do it.
Noah Bonecutter on YouTube, Jordan Love or Matthew Stafford. Mr. Bakeslot, we are praying for you, starting Deebo Samuel over Braylon Allen. Jordan Love or Matthew Stafford this week. I think this is closer. I still lean towards Jordan Love here over Stafford, but I think you can make an argument for Stafford here.
Yeah, I'm pulling up the rankings right now because I feel that they're very close.
While you pull those up, I will say that in doing my homework in getting ready for this Packers Seahawks game, the Seahawks, I think, are the worst team, or they're bottom 3 in the league in rushing yards given up between the tackles. And Josh Jacobs is leading the NFL in rushing yards between the tackles. I think this is another big time Jacobs game. Yeah. He had the big game on Thanksgiving. Nobody realized, I didn't even realize this till after the game. He had 3 touchdowns against Detroit last week. He had another 3 touchdown game earlier this season. So I do understand. And Jordan Love, by the way, what did he throw? Like 22 passes last week, 20 passes the week before. If that holds true again, and this is a Jacobs game, you're asking an awful lot from Jordan Love in a limited amount of passing plays. So, yeah, I mean, I can understand the argument why you'd want to play Stafford over Love. Stafford, who should throw more passes than Jordan Love this week.
Since the bye week, Jordan Love, 17 pass attempts, 23 pass attempts, 28 pass attempts, 20 pass attempts. He's been quarterback 15 or worse in 3 of the last 4 games. Let's go with Stafford, baby.
All right.
Let's go with Stafford.
Here we go. I love it.
We got 3 minutes to lock it in. Lock in Stafford.
All right. I want to make sure we got through all your stuff. We talked about Stafford. We just talked a little bit about him right now. Is there anything else you want to say about Stafford for anybody who's on the fence about starting or sitting him tonight?
Let's look here. Stafford.
Because I think there's good and bad about playing Stafford tonight.
Stafford over Russell Wilson.
Yeah, I agree. Okay. I agree for sure.
Yeah, Stafford over Caleb Williams.
I can get on board with that. Yes.
Yeah. And Stafford over Geno Smith, Kirk Cousins, Bryce Young. There you go.
Yep, all 3 of those guys for sure.
Yeah, so Stafford ends up being my quarterback 20 for this week.
Geno Smith, by the way, might have to tangle with Jair Alexander in that Packers secondary. It looks like he's going to be coming back this week.
Jair Alexander is going to be back, yeah.
There you go. Cooper Kupp or Cortland Sutton for anybody who has to make this choice. This is interesting. Sutton kind of an afterthought at the start of the season. Not so fast, my friend, now. And you're actually benching Kupp in favor of Sutton this week.
Yes. Sutton, I would go with Sutton. 3 top 10 finishes in the last 5 weeks. Cooper Kupp has 3 top 13 finishes in the last 14 weeks. Kupp didn't play in that San Francisco game, and for Kupp to pay off, he needs the touchdowns. But Sutton has earned the targets. He's earned 8 or more targets in 6 straight games. That's the difference between, Ryan Reynolds and I were talking about this yesterday on Man vs. Machine, which you can watch on the Roto Underworld Network, 9 p.m. Eastern. Ryan Reynolds, he's such a good NFL mind. And we talked about the difference between Cortland Sutton and A.J. Brown and how Brown is commanding just a massive target share, 33%. I mentioned that earlier in the show, but Cortland Sutton's volume is so much more significant that it offsets a lower target share, and we're still getting the touchdowns from Cortland Sutton. Like, the increased volume increases your chance that target is a red zone target or an end zone target. So that's where those touchdowns are more prevalent.
I'm going to do this because we got last minute here. Juwan Jennings is a definite must start. The Niners defense, you want to find another option for, though.
Yeah, Jennings has been a top 10 wide receiver in 2 of the last 4 weeks. He was the wide receiver 1 overall the last time the Rams and San Francisco 49ers squared off, right? San Francisco is missing so many pieces. It's the Jennings show. It's the Kittle show. And we're sitting the 49ers defense.
Even with Bosa back.
Even with Bosa back, the rest of the defense is still hobbled, right? We could see a couple sacks from Bosa, but still, like, Fred Warner has been playing with a fractured ankle for most of the season. Like, if that doesn't slow you down even just a little bit, like, I know he's an Iron Man, I get it, but a fractured ankle would slow down even Zeus, okay? You know?
It's true. It definitely would. It definitely would. Bill Hollywood, we appreciate the kind words. I will see you at the KFFSC in Louisville, hopefully sooner rather than later. It is time for Bradley Stalder's FFPC Weekly Challenge Week 15 lineup. You too can play the FFPC Weekly Challenge. You could dupe Bradley's lineup if you wanted by going to myffpc.com right now and signing up for the Weekly Challenge. The Thursday one is basically locked because the game is starting any second now. But you can still get into the Sunday one, which locks at 1 p.m. Sunday afternoon. No draft, no salary cap. You just choose your players. 10 players without kickers and defenses, 12 players with it. Just don't put them on the same team. If you want Brock Purdy, you can't have George Kittle. If you want Matthew Stafford, you cannot have Cooper Kupp. You can only have one player per NFL team. Win up to $2,500. Enter for as little as $35. 10, 30, and 100-team contests now over at myffpc.com, myffpc.com. You have built a formidable lineup here, Bradley, as I look at it right now. I think we will start talking about your quarterback. There is no shock. There is no surprise. It's a dude coming off a legendary week 14, hopefully carrying that over to success in a total of 56.5 points, according to our friends in the desert right now, between the Bills and the Lions. How hard did you have to think about putting Josh Allen in at your starting quarterback here?
So the question for me was, what part of this Buffalo-Detroit game do I want? Mm-hmm. And I want the quarterback. I want Josh Allen, who's going to get he had 3 rushing touchdowns last week. I don't know which wide receiver it's going to be for the Bills. I don't know if it's going to be Keon Coleman, Dalton Kincaid, Khalil Shakir, Amari Cooper. I don't know who it's going to be.
Right.
We know it's going to be Josh Allen. Okay.
Right.
That's the logic. Like, I wanted pieces of this game. So as you'll see later, like I put in another piece that I thought would be a pretty interesting upside piece to compete. So
yeah. And we'll get to that too, for sure. But you obviously, people are like, oh, you can't go chalk. You can't go chalk. Well, this is the exact same format as the world famous FFPC Playoff Challenge, which I believe we're officially announcing tomorrow. More to come on that. If you are a subscriber to the FFPC newsletter, that'll come out tomorrow. More announcement on that. We see chalk plays as an integral part of these $500,000 team winning lineups all the time. And if you want to win big this week, you can have plenty of chalk. It's going to be fine. And after what we saw last week with Ray Davis taking a prominent role in the Bills running game over James Cook, we still don't know what's going on with the Bills receivers and tight ends with Kincaid, Cooper, Shakir. I mean, none of those guys represent a huge ceiling. And only one of them represents even a solid floor in Khalil Shakir. Josh Allen is the slam dunk that the Bills that you got to go with. Now, as they move over to running backs here, it looks like we have 4 of them to speak of. We'll kick things off with Zach Charbonnet. He is listed first on here. You are convinced, my friend, that on Sunday night when the Seahawks take on our beloved Green Bay Packers in Seattle, that Kenneth Walker will be in street clothes.
Yeah, I don't think Kenneth Walker plays. He's not. The chatter last week was that this was an injury that the team was monitoring, And whenever that type of language is used, like as the director of the news desk, you just know, like here at Player Profile, like I run the news desk and I hear these coach phrases all the time. Not that I'm like coach speak index, but you understand the lingo and the way in which teams approach injuries. And when a team says, hey, we're monitoring this injury, and they're not saying, oh, he's day to day, we expect him back. Like, you wait for the enthusiasm. There was no enthusiasm for Kenneth Walker's return, which is why we want to be very bullish on Zach Charbonnet, who has finished as a top 10 running back in every game that he has started. Like, you want to be in on Zach Charbonnet. The volume is there. The efficiency is there. He's been crushing it. This offense fits him so much better than the previous offense that, the Seattle was running with him last year. So yeah, we want Zach Charbonnet in our lineup.
A pass to George Kittle deep down the left sideline falls incomplete on 3rd and 9 for the Niners. They have punted to the Rams. The Rams now have the ball 1st and 10 at their own 29. We get a Kyron Williams 5-yard run and then an offensive holding penalty. Now 2nd and 15 as the Rams are backed up. I don't want to give short shrift to Bill Hollywood about Keon Coleman. We were talking about Josh Allen. Is Keon Coleman going to be back? He was estimated as a full participant on the practice report today. They had to cancel the practice because of bad weather in Buffalo today. But I mean, Coleman, whether he's back or not, with all due respect to Bill Hollywood, he's not playable for me in any league.
In desperation flexes, like, you never know how these injuries are affecting your team. Like,
and because of the total 56.5 points, I mean, I think you have to look long and hard at everybody there. Right.
And, Keon Coleman is one of those players that could come down with 3 for 85 and a touchdown, and then your day is salvaged. Like, that's within the range of outcomes for Keon Coleman. But that's another reason why we want to go with Josh
Allen. Let's go. So you have Zach Charbonnet as one of your running backs. Another one that you have on the road in Tennessee against, and I know they were playing really good rush defense earlier in the season. I'd have to look to see if they're still playing good rush defense, but you're taking Chase Brown at Tennessee this week, a guy who, by the way, has been just as effective in the passing game as he has been in the ground game. Hard to argue with this one here, a guy that nobody thinks of as an elite running back, but quite frankly, in 2024, that's exactly what he's been.
Yeah. Chase Brown has been a top 10 running back each of the last 5 weeks and has earned at least 7 targets in 3 of the last 4. Yeah. 15 touches. This is the guy who's going to touch the ball for the Cincinnati Bengals out of the backfield. Khalil Herbert is just an afterthought. It's clear that they trust Chase Brown in the backfield. They want to get him touches. He is a dynamic player. So yeah, let's fire up some more Chase Brown in a Tennessee game where the Cincinnati Bengals need to win out, among other things, for them to make the playoffs. They are not officially eliminated as of right now. However, they need a lot to go right. They need to win out, and they're going to get the ball to their big-time players. And Chase Brown, I think, is that differentiator leverage, because a lot of people want Jamar Chase. A lot of people want T. Higgins. A lot of people want Joe Burrow. But Chase Brown is probably going to be a differentiator there.
The second and third downs for the Rams here featured incompletions to Cooper Kupp on both plays. The Rams have since punted to the Niners. The Niners have the ball back 1st and 10 at their own 26, 12:48 to go in the first quarter as we are off to a sluggish offensive start here. They have gone to commercial. We will not, because we have to keep plowing through this lineup to figure out who else you like at running back. No surprise here as your third running back, Bijan Robinson, Bradley, who has come alive these last couple weeks. Even 1 week where Algier got into the end zone, Robinson still had a good game. He's really turning it on at the time of the year when fantasy owners need him the most.
Yeah, this is why you drafted Bijan 101, 102, 103 for this stretch of the fantasy football season, for him to really pick it up. And ultimately, it was an easy smash. Like, who else are you going to pick on Atlanta? There's no one else that you trust in the Atlanta offense. Even Drake London, it's Bijan Robinson that you're trusting. And that's what we heard at the beginning of the year. Like, who's the offense going to run through? It's going to run through Bijan Robinson. So that's still true. We're still holding on to it, and that's why we're firing up Bijan. He's one of the best.
I made my plea for Josh Jacobs earlier when we were talking about how you beat the Seahawks. You beat them between the tackles. They are weak there in the ground game. They're actually pretty stout in the passing game between the tackles. Jaron Reed and help me out, Leonard Williams, right, is the other defensive tackle.
Yes.
They've been pretty good rushing the passer between the tackles. Ground game, stopping it, that's been another issue. Jacobs is really good at it. Seahawks are not good at stopping it. I think this is a big Josh Jacobs game, and you have him in as your fourth running back here in this lineup.
Yeah, I was the highest ranker in all of Fantasy Pros expert rankers on Josh Jacobs last week. And he came with the 3-touchdown game. And, look, he has gotten the volume. Chris Brooks and Emmanuel Wilson have been sprinkled in here and there. But when the Packers have to get it, it's Josh Jacobs. It's plain and simple. They're not overthinking it in the running game on offense. Maybe next year we can take some shots at Marshawn Lloyd, sure. But Josh Jacobs is the guy. And who else are you going to trust in the Green Bay offense? Once again, it's the argument for Bijan Robinson replicated in Green Bay for Josh Jacobs.
4 wide receivers as well as 4 running backs here. Let's get into your receivers. Coming off the bye, it's Nico Collins. Happen to like him quite a bit. And based on our conversations earlier in the program about Nico Collins, you love him this week too as well.
Yeah, number 4 among wide receivers in expected fantasy points per game. Number 2 in formation adjusted yards per route run. Number 6 in yards per target. Every single week since he's been back from the injured reserve, he's been a 40-plus yard touchdown has been called back due to penalty. The amount of fantasy points that he could be giving your team is even higher. All you just need is one of those to click. Nico Collins is a game breaker with CJ Stroud and the rest of the Houston offense. Give me Nico Collins.
Yeah, he's a great pick in this. I want to skip over your next 2. I want to come back to him. I'm going to go to the last one here. You got Mike Evans in Tampa. No question there. I mean, this guy, just all he does is produce. He should produce again this week. The game for the Buccaneers is in the late window. It is against a tougher defense in the Chargers. However, total on that 45.5, Baker Mayfield throws the ball a ton. He should be throwing it a ton to Mike Evans. As long as his hamstring's good to go, I'm good to go with Mike Evans this week.
Yeah, we're playing Mike Evans. Easy, simple, nice.
Yeah, I mean it's like, and sometimes it's easy to understand. Now these other 2, I think are interesting. I'm going to go to Jordan Addison first here. He makes your lineup coming off a massive 3-touchdown week, his best game of the season. He gets the Bears on Monday Night Football. You could have picked. I mean, let's just look at some of the receivers that you are not taking in order to play Jordan Addison this week. You could have had Amon-Ra St. Brown. You're choosing not to play him. You could have had a Tyreek Hill. You're choosing not to play him. A.J. Brown we kind of talked about earlier, but CeeDee Lamb, Terry McLaurin, you are eschewing all those guys in favor of Jordan Addison. Is this a hot hand? What are we doing here with Addison? Why does he make your 10-player lineup here tonight, Bradley?
Yeah, this is a player that is very undervalued in the weeks where you want a spike. Like, he is the spike week king. We look over the last couple weeks, he's been the wide receiver 1 against Chicago. Oh, wait, who's he playing in week 15? Chicago.
The Bears, yep.
The Bears. And then he put up another 30-burger in week 14 against Atlanta, both over 130 receiving yards. He's been getting the air yards all season. He's been getting the touchdowns all season. It's about the big plays downfield, right? And the metrics indicate that he's more of like a mid wide receiver too. Yards per reception, he's 12th. Yards per target, he's 12th. 15th in explosive rating, 28th in dominator rating. Like, fine, but number 6 in fantasy points per target. So when he hits very big. And in a game that I think is a sneaky shootout game, at home for Minnesota, in a dome, they're not worried about the weather. Right. Darnold and the Vikings have things to play for right now, and it's a division game. Yeah, we want to fire up Jordan Addison, especially because we saw what happened last time. The Bears bracketed Justin Jefferson, they're not going to bracket Jordan Addison. They're going to say, if anyone's going to beat us, it's going to be Jordan Addison.
Now, Matt Deutsch in my ear, our producer tonight, why Jordan Addison over Justin Jefferson? Is this a pivot? Is this because Addison was so good against the Bears last time that he could be sneaky good, and while everybody else is rostering Jefferson, you have the better guy this week in Addison? Is that the line of thinking here with Addison over Jefferson?
It's not quite the same parallel, but you can think of almost Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. Like, there is a significant range of outcomes where T. Higgins outscores Jamar Chase on a week-to-week basis. Mm-hmm. But the ceiling for Chase is so much higher, like no denial. However, the Jordan Addison explosion games also exist, and that's where you can have leverage on the field.
Brock Purdy is connected with George Kittle for a 33-yard catch that gets the Niners into field goal territory. However, the drive stagnates after a pair of handoffs to Isaac Guerrero and Deebo Samuel do not garner a first down. Jake Moody drills a 53-yard field goal to get the scoring underway. 3-0 San Francisco. They will be kicking off when they return from break to the Rams. 10:01 to go in the first quarter. Your other receiver here tonight, your final receiver, yes, is a player who is playing opposite Bill Hollywood's player of the week and Amon-Ra St. Brown. It's Jameson Williams. Jameson Williams, by the way, who I believe had a better fantasy performance against the Packers last week than St. Brown did. Talk about Jameson Williams here. Why does he make your roster as your Lion, again, in a not even a potential, what should be a shootout type game with Buffalo and Detroit?
Yeah, I wanted piece of this game, and I wanted to pivot off of Amon-Ra. Amon-Ra has not been Amon-Ra over the last few weeks. And we look at what Jameson Williams can do. We've seen a top 8 performance from JMO. We've seen 4 straight weeks of at least 6 targets for Jameson Williams. They're trying to get him the ball in space creatively. And this is a game that, as I said, I want a part of it, and I want the most explosive player as a part of it. I've already filled my lineup with, Jahmyr Gibbs, running back, but I've already filled my running back spots. Right. I want the next most explosive player that's up across the way that's playing opposite of Josh Allen, and that's Jameson Williams.
So those, we got the quarterback, we got the 4 running backs, the 4 receivers, and the tight end, again, chalky. Now I'll bring this up because last week Brock Bowers was okay, but Michael Mayer was the one who took center stage for the Raiders at tight end last week. We don't know who the quarterback is going to be. It could be Aiden O'Connell. It could be who's the starter there now? Not O'Connell. Desmond Ridder, or it could be Carter Bradley. By the way, I can't believe I came up with Carter Bradley like this after our conversation in the first hour, yet I couldn't remember Desmond Ridder. Yeah, impressive. Well, not about Ridder, not remembering him. He just played last week. You have Bowers in there over Mayer. Was the Mayer thing just a blip? Because Bowers has been pretty awesome all year.
Yeah, I think it's a blip. Unfortunately, the Raiders have 2 very, very good tight ends, and it just so happens to be that Brock Bowers is generational, and Mayer on almost any other team would be a tight end 1. Like, imagine Michael Mayer on the Giants or the Panthers or you name it. He would be a top 12, top 10 tight end for fantasy.
Chargers. He looked real good as a Charger too.
Don't get me started.
Okay, I won't get you started on that.
Look, as a Notre Dame alum, I have a special place in my heart for these Tommy Trembles of the world, the Cole Kmets of the world, the Michael Mayers of the world. Please, let's get these guys, good spots. And Michael Mayer, yeah, the coaching isn't there for him. He's not one that's getting elevated by the Raiders, being on the Raiders. So let's get him anywhere else this offseason. Raiders, put him on the trade block. Please, 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 please.
Raiders could use draft assets, and they have their stud tight end in Brock Bowers, and that is your stud lineup for Bradley Stalder in the FFPC Weekly Challenge Week 15 lineup. As a reminder, he has Josh Allen in at quarterback, Zach Charbonnet, Chase Brown, Bijan Robinson, Josh Jacobs in at running back. The receivers, Nico Collins, Jameson Williams, Jordan Addison and Mike Evans, and then Brock Bowers at tight end. You can dupe this lineup or create your own right now at myffpc.com. Just go to myffpc.com, click on the weekly challenge link right in the upper left-hand corner of your screen or the top of your screen if you're on mobile. No draft, no salary cap, 10 or 12 players in this format. You can play with kickers and defenses if you want. You do not have to. 30-team leagues, 10-team leagues, 100-team leagues. Enter for as little as $35, win up to $2,500 this week. Just pick your players. You don't have to draft them. There's no salary cap. Just don't pick the same player on the same team. Same as our world famous FFPC playoff challenge. myffpc.com, myffpc.com, or simply scan the QR code on the bottom of the screen, which our producer Matt Deutsch has put up right now. I do believe. Do we have a turn? No, it was a punt. I thought it was a turnover. It's a punt. The Rams could not get anything going. Puka Nacua does have a 7-yard catch on the drive, but the Rams have to punt it away. The Niners have taken over at their own 19-yard line, 2nd and 9 after a 1-yard Deebo Samuel run. 8:21 to go in the first quarter there. We're going to step out and take a quick break. When we come back, Bradley Stalder is going to answer more start-sit questions for you. We got a ton that we're going to talk about, some that we haven't talked about yet. We're going to get into Isaiah Pacheco. We're going to get into Adam Thielen, Jake Ferguson as well, Baker Mayfield, CJ Stroud, those players and much more as we finish up strong. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back in less than 2 minutes or less than 3 minutes maybe here on the Better Sports Network. This is the High Stakes Fantasy Football Show presented by the FFPC. He's Bradley Stalder. I'm Eric Balkman. We roll on next.
The Bears have to be one of the most inept franchises of any sport I've ever seen in my entire life. And they share the city with the White Sox, who are also inept. Like, that is how bad the Bears are. I just don't understand how you can go your entire existence and the quarterback that wins you a Super Bowl is Jim McMahon. You couldn't find anybody else.
They don't have a good history with quarterbacks, and they let him be the quarterback for a long time, too.
Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes right there. Mm-hmm. And you drafted Mitch Trubisky. They were right there. I there's a lot of pain in being a Falcons fan. The Bears are one of the teams I could argue they might have it worse, and they have a Super Bowl.
And
when the best quarterback in the past 50 years is Jay Cutler, you have a problem.
That's so funny that you just said that. We were talking about Jay Cutler the other day, me and my friend, and I was like, yeah, he was on, because we were watching the Colorado Rockies game against the Giants, and it looked like he was behind the thing. I was, yeah, well, he played for Denver most of his career. We looked it up. Chicago let him be their starting quarterback way too long.
Here's the thing, too, is that Jay Cutler wasn't bad. Like, he was erratic. He wasn't terrible, though.
The poor man's Brett Favre.
I'm taking him over Justin Fields. I'm sorry.
I would.
But Jay Cutler led that team to an NFC title game that they lost to Green Bay. But he's gotten farther than anybody else. You want to know who the other starting quarterback was for the Bears in the other Super Bowl appearance they made? It was Rex Grossman. What are we doing out here? It was Rex Grossman and Kyle Orton was the backup. How are you that bad? Bro, like, oh my God. Listen to the top 5. According to Football Reference, the top 5 greatest Bears quarterbacks of all time. Jay Cutler, number 1.
I can't believe it.
Sid Luckman, who last played in 1950, is number 2. Jim Harbaugh is number 3. Jim McMahon, the Super Bowl winner, is number 4, and he played there for 6 years. And Mitch Trubisky, is number 5 on the list as terms of passing yards go.
Well, another possession, another punt on Thursday Night Football. The Niners have punted it back to the Rams after not being able to do anything with it. 6:47 to go in the first. The Rams will be taking over at their own 20 when they resume action on a commercial break. Right now, we're not on one, as Bradley Stalder and I are helping you set your lineups for the FFPC Main Event Championship round and the Fantasy Pros Championship as well. I want to start off with running backs here. This is an interesting one because I think a lot of times when I do these start sits, where I'm posting players that are maybe a little bit normally further down in the rankings, but we don't have that this week because if you're still playing, you're in the playoffs or you're in the championship round. So you do have tougher decisions to make, but they're tougher in the sense that these guys have mostly been both startable all year, and now you can only pick one with nobody on bye. So what are you doing this week between DeAndre Swift Monday night on the road against Minnesota or Tyrone Tracy this week? The Giants are taking on the Baltimore Ravens. This is, I believe, the biggest point spread of the year in the NFL, with the Ravens moving to a 16.5 point road favorite, which is crazy. So obviously the game script, not great for Tracy, but he still catches passes. So you do have that. Swift dealing with a groin injury. There's a lot to unpack here. You're going to lean with the rookie, though, it sounds like.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Tyrone Tracy. This there was a moment there a couple games ago where Devin Singletary got a little bit of run, but looking at what Tyrone Tracy has done since since week 6, right? No, we'll even go back to week 5. Running back 16 on the week, 7, 42. That was the blip against Philly. Running back 4, 34, 10, 28, 17, 11, right? That's where he's finishing. So yeah, give me the guy who he had 10 targets last week against New Orleans. Yeah, he's getting involved in the passing game. There's really, other than Malik Neighbors, there's nothing else in this offense. The Giants want to see, is Tyrone Tracy going to be the starting running back for the Giants in 2025? Like,
yeah,
do they need to address that position even from a depth perception? Yeah.
I would say this too, and I don't have any stats to back this up. My just lazy analysis, knowing that DeVito is starting at quarterback, I would just assume that's better for Tracy than if Drew Lock was in at quarterback. I'm just assuming that's the case. And that is the case, by the way. DeVito is starting at quarterback, which is another little feather in Tracy's cap when you're concerning, well, who do I start? And knowing that Swift could be legitimately questionable going into Monday Night Football, I think I'm siding with you on this. I think there's more to like about Tracy in this matchup. Marky219 on Twitch. Does Jordan Addison or DJ Moore start over James Conner or Devontae Adams this week? Full PPR. So you got to pick 2 of these guys out of these 4. Addison, Moore, Conner, or Adams this week. I think I have to play Adams. You talked about your proclivity for both Addison and Moore this week. Is it enough to play Addison or Moore over Conner or Adams?
I think so.
So you would play both Addison and Moore this week over Conner and Adams?
Yeah,
if you could pick 2 of these 4 guys in a perfect world, who would it be?
In the most perfect world, like James Conner should be one of those guys.
Okay.
Should be one of those guys. DJ Moore, we're talking floor, we're talking ceiling. The reason why I was big on Addison and JMO is because they're the biggest play type of players, But when we're talking about median projected outcome, DJ Moore and James Conner are probably the best bets for right now.
He's got Tracy as well. Does that cloud this up?
No, I'd still go with Conner and DJ Moore.
Okay.
All
right.
From a median perspective, you're not down by a ton. You don't need to make up major ground in your league because different teams need different things to happen to go right. So
you're not missing anything in the Thursday Night Football game. We have yet another punt as the Rams punt it back to the Niners. They take over at their own 22. Juwan Jennings gets a 13-yard catch on first down. When they pick up action, we'll tell you what's going on there. 5:05 to go in the first quarter. The other question that Marky brings up, and I'm going to say Hawkinson here, but he has to decide between TJ Hawkinson and Mark Andrews. Think about during drafting season where Hawkinson was basically like the 9th or 10th tight end off the board because we knew he was missing time. What Marky did is he got Mark Andrews early, and then he added TJ Hawkinson. Now he's facing that tough start-sit decision. Who do I take this week? Hawkinson against the Bears or Mark Andrews against the Giants?
Yeah, that's actually pretty common for, especially drafters who were pretty sharp and knew that Hawkinson was going to come back and still command, elite usage as one of those tight ends. So shout out to you, Marky219.
On
But when it
Twitch.
comes, on Twitch, these are coin flip players right now, right? Hawkinson, we've seen the zeros, but also we know what he did against Chicago as of late. And Mandrews gets the Giants. We talked about the massive, upswing. I talked with Ryan Reynolds yesterday, and the perspective he offered was that he expects that the Ravens throw a lot against the Giants. And I was kind of caught off guard by that. I wasn't expecting that. But over the last 4 games that Mark Andrews has played, he's been a top 10 tight end in 3 of those. So, including tight end 2 in week 10, tight end 4 in his most recent game against Philly, 6 for 67 and a touchdown. So the touchdowns have been there, the usage has been there, the targets have been there over the last little bit for Andrews. I will give the lean to Hawkinson, though. I think that's where I'm going to lean.
I just again, this is lazy analysis on my part. I just look at a 16.5 point spread. And yeah, I know the Ravens they can't just run the ball on every down. I just feel like you're not getting a full 4 quarters out of Mark Andrews this week because they're just not going to have to use him. Hawkinson, I could see a full 4 quarters. Even though it's against the Bears, they're not 16.5 point favorites.
The Bears are not going to give up.
No, they're not. There's no fight in them Chicago Bears for sure. What about this one? Tank Bigsby or Sincere McCormick this week? We touched on McCormick a little bit. Bigsby we haven't talked about pretty much at all. A guy who basically is the starting running back for the Jacksonville Jaguars right now, starting the season with Trevor Lawrence and Travis Etienne in the backfield. Now you have Mac Jones and Tank Bigsby, but there's a lot to like about Bigsby. In fact, you like him enough to say he's the guy over McCormick.
Yeah, give me Tank Bigsby. The thing that Bigsby looks explosive. Like Sincere McCormick looks good, but Bigsby has the explosion to him. He's not going to get the usage in the passing game, but McCormick has not been, commanding a ton of targets and useful targets. And we have at least a little bit more confidence in Mac Jones as a quarterback than whatever the Raiders are going to throw out there in week 15. So give me some Tank Bigsby this week.
Another interesting one too is Isaiah Pacheco, who, you talked about, this is sort of like a lineup philosophy question. Am I going to play Pacheco this week when I know he's still splitting snaps with Kareem Hunt and even Carson Steele still getting in there from time to time?
Yes.
Or Ramondre Stevenson, who basically has the lion's share, right? Are you playing Stevenson over Pacheco, or is the upside of the Chiefs offense enough for you to say, hey, it's Isaiah Pacheco here for me?
Yeah, I talked about cannibalizing earlier, and I'm still going to stick to there's enough being taken out that we do look at Pacheco as more of a flex play than an RB2. But when it comes to what upside exists for Isaiah Pacheco versus Ramondre Stevenson, the willingness of the Chiefs to run the ball with volume that we've seen this season, yeah, give me Isaiah Pacheco a little bit over Ramondre Stevenson. This New England game could get ugly.
We have had our 6th punt of the first quarter tonight in Thursday Night Football. 2 minutes to go in the first quarter. The Rams are now taking over at their own 16-yard line. I would give you the leaders and for stats. It's not great right now. You got Kittle at 1 catch for 33. Nakua has 1 for 7. But Kyron Williams and Isaac Guerrero are both under 20 yards rushing. Matthew Stafford, 11 yards passing. Brock Purdy still under 60 yards passing. So there will be fireworks. Just haven't seen them yet. We got to keep waiting. And we'll be here to take you through it for the next 10 minutes plus. That's the running backs. Wide receivers, Jacoby Myers, Brian Thomas. You're going with Myers. I totally agree with you here. Thomas was a guy that I think last week was getting a bagel to like the second half and then turned in a pretty good performance. But Myers is so involved. He's one of those guys where I never expect a touchdown, and it's okay because it seems like he's getting enough volume, whether it's Aiden O'Connell, whether it's Gardner Minshew, whether it's Desmond Ridder. He's just getting enough volume to say, yeah, give me that floor with Myers, and I'm not going to mess around with Brian Thomas.
Yeah, I'm monitoring the Evan Ingram situation. If Ingram is out, give me Brian Thomas, though. if Ingram is in, though, I think that's enough of a target share that's taken away from Brian Thomas to offset where I have Jacoby Myers. So monitor that situation. But if all things being equal, Evan Ingram plays, giving Jacoby Myers, but Brian Thomas, he got 10 targets last week. It was a big play. So I get it. But the consistency is there for Jacoby Myers, about my wide receiver 20 or so.
Juju Pro, yes, we love Charbonnet this week without knowing the rest of your squad. We're big fans of Charbonnet here for sure. You'll know about that Myers or Thomas decision. The Jaguars have a 1:00 game on Sunday, and Myers doesn't play until Monday night. So you'll find out about whether Evan Ingram is going to be active or not. Adam Thielen, the resurrection of Adam Thielen, the shot of the week for me on the sideline was Adam Thielen just sucking wind and needing to come out of the game, refusing to. And then there was a timeout and he had his hands on his knees, breathing heavy. Yes, he's old, but he also missed a good chunk of the season. He's still trying to get back into football shape. He looked good. Bryce Young is looking good. But if it comes down to him or Jalen Waddle, you are still saying, yes, I love that draft pedigree with Waddle. I love the way that Waddle's coming on lately. Give me Waddle over Thielen.
Yeah, it seems like Miami is starting to get their offense together. I look, Adam Thielen, this is more of a coin toss. This is much more of a coin toss than, what people would be looking at it. Heck, the more I'm thinking about it, Eric, maybe you're talking me into Adam Thielen here. Maybe you're changing my mind. Oh man, old man strength is now that I'm sitting with it a little bit. But these are the reality, Eric, is these types of conversations help you think more about these. And my initial reaction was, I want Jalen Waddle. He's on the upswing, blah blah blah. But no, who's been upswinging more? Who's the wide receiver one for Carolina now? It's Adam Thielen. So I'm changing my answer here, Eric.
Hey,
midstream, let's go. It's Adam Thielen over Jalen Waddle. Let's go, baby.
I will say this, not to go back on what I was just saying. The total on that Cowboys-Panthers game, it's 43. And believe it or not, Panthers are 3-point favorites. Dallas coming off the short week. Maybe it's a big Chuba Hubbard week. But, here's the thing. Like, you're still going to have to throw the ball to Thielen.
Yes.
To move the ball down the field. So he is not one of these guys that you need him to make a big play. The floor is going to be there for him. I can totally get on board with Thielen over Waddle here. We talked about these guys earlier, Keenan Allen, Jamison Williams. You love the upside with Jamison Williams here, and that's why you're playing him over Keenan Allen, I assume?
Yeah, pretty fun. This game, these games in the Dome, going to be a lot of fun. But the higher game total for the Detroit Lions, the upside for Jamison Williams, the targets he's been getting. Yeah, we want pieces of that game over the Bears-Vikings.
Bears-Vikings, I can't, my apologies if I already recited this, but the Bears-Vikings total is only 43.5. You're basically getting 2 extra touchdowns of scoring in that Bills-Lions game. So I'm with you. I think it's Jamison Williams all the way here. Tight ends, talked about these guys ad nauseum. Well, Andrews for sure. But Andrews or Zach Ertz. Now, Ertz is interesting. Now, I know I talked him up earlier in the program, but I want to point this out. This is a game where, granted, Washington's on the road. They're going to a battered New Orleans team that is not having Derek Carr, that is not having Chris Olave. Like, they're missing some big. Taysom Hill is out this game, too. They're missing some.
Well, breaking.
Oh, here we go.
Jimmy Fowler 4 minutes ago. Jake Haener to start at quarterback for the Saints.
There you go. So Haener is going to be the guy in at quarterback. We know Derek Carr is going to miss this week. Does that mean that the Commanders are going to feature Brian Robinson for 15, 20 carries and maybe mix in some Jeremy McNichols, and Jaden Daniels won't be asked to do much, which means not a lot of catches for Ertz, which means Mark Andrews is the play? I'm saying a lot of what ifs here, but that's the path I went down. I don't know if you went down that same path, but it looks like you're coming up with Mark Andrews over Zach Ertz as well.
Yeah, looking at Zach Ertz, he's had 3 top 10 finishes on the year. 3. Mm-hmm. And he's played the whole season. Mandrews has had 3 in the last 4 games. Yeah, we're going Mandrews.
I want to bring this up too, just so we can clarify. for Juju Pro on Twitch. It's his flex spot. Charbonnet Neighbors would be the guy he'd be sitting if he plays Charbonnet. I'm on board with sitting Neighbors for Charbonnet.
Yes, same.
Okay, moving on here. Hunter Henry or Juwan Johnson from the aforementioned New Orleans Saints. The thing that scares me about Henry is, and I know the floor is there, but my mother of God, Austin Hooper is just mucking things up for Hunter Henry owners pretty much all season. Juwan Johnson's not dealing with that in New Orleans right now. You're saying Henry here, but I the Hooper thing does give me a little bit of pause.
I mean, Henry's still been a top 12 tight end 2 of the last 3 weeks. And even when he wasn't, it was tight end 16. And we've seen multiple top 10 finishes earlier in the season as well from Hunter Henry. So is it nibbling a little bit? Is Austin Hooper nibbling a tad? Sure. I'll grant that. We haven't seen a top 7 performance since week 7. But all he needs is a touchdown, and he hasn't had a touchdown since week 6. So,
okay, all right. Well, then it's clear. It's Hunter Henry. I get it.
Yeah.
They have gone to the second quarter, or I shouldn't say they've gone to the second quarter yet. They're at the end of the first quarter in Santa Clara. The Niners haven't punted it yet, but they do have a 3rd and 4 from their own 36-yard line. We'll keep you posted on that the next couple minutes to see what happens there. Tight ends continued. The last one we'll do, Jake Ferguson, who came back last week for the Cowboys. He gets the Panthers this week. Cade Otton this week, who's been a little bit muted since the return of Mike Evans, but still making his presence known. Where do you land in on this? Ferguson against the Panthers or Cade Otton against the Chargers this week?
Yeah, Ferguson's finished outside the top 20 of tight ends each of the last 3 weeks. And he's finished outside the top 27 of tight ends in 4 of the last 6. Gross.
Yeah, that's bad. That's
like real bad. The expert consensus rankings have him at tight end 14. I'm nowhere close to that. That's just way too aggressive. We haven't seen, inside the top 10 for Jake Ferguson since week 4. So no, there's not a lot of optimism for Jake Ferguson. Instead, flipping the switch to Cade Otton, where, look, we were talking, Mike Evans plays fantastic, great. But if he doesn't play, we know what happens with Cade Otton. Like, the upside exists. There's no upside with playing Jake Ferguson.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense to me. And I'll say this again, and I come back to it because it really surprises me. Not that I utilize totals as the end all be all, but I do use them as a tool. That's a 45.5 point total in that Buccaneers Chargers game, which is surprising a little bit to me because I know the Chargers defense has been very, very good this year, but Baker Mayfield throws it a ton. And that's good enough for me to say Otton over Ferguson, not to mention how bad Ferguson's been. Juju Pro has one more question. He could stack Mike Evans and Baker Mayfield in his lineup this week. But if he does that, it would mean playing Mayfield over a red-hot Sam Darnold. Is that something you would advise?
They're very close. Like, they're close enough in those rankings where I'm okay with it. I'm okay with, especially, what is this, a tournament setting?
I'm assuming, yeah.
Especially in a tournament setting, the stacking is literally Juju Pro 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5. During the off season, Dan Williamson and I host a show called Stack Hunters for the Player Profiler Network. So yes, like the bias is in favor of finding the stacks when you have quarterbacks in that same tier.
I'm just looking at the time here. Let's go rapid fire on these last 3 quarterback questions. Jaden Daniels or Sam Darnold? You're rolling with Daniels this week?
Yes. Jaden Daniels. Let's go.
Is it just because of the dual threat aspect of Daniels?
The rushing is there. The passing is there enough that even if it gets out of hand, he'll still be good for fantasy.
Bo Nix has been awesome this year, but it's still Kyler Murray for you in week 15.
Yeah, the floor is real nice for Nix, but Murray gives you a little bit more of a sprinkle on the ceiling.
And then the last one, too, we just talked about this, Mayfield or CJ Stroud. CJ Stroud has, all those, I don't know how you fell in on this during draft season, but there's a lot of people saying don't take Stroud because of where he's going, and he could be taking a step back. He did take a significant step back this year. Think about how Bobby Slowick was touted as this great savior offensive coordinator last year. This year, maybe not so much. Part of that has been Mixon has been really awesome this year, and Stroud hasn't been asked to do as much. When it comes down to it, Mayfield or Stroud, you are benching Stroud this week in favor of Mayfield.
Yeah, it's not particularly close. Like, we've seen so many bad finishes for CJ Stroud. Just the last game he played against Jacksonville, who should have been pretty easily beatable. Quarterback 25.
Yeah.
Not good. Quarterback 25, quarterback 24 or worse in 5 of the last 7 games for CJ Stroud.
We will continue to follow you on the X at FF Stalder. We will continue to read out everything you're churning over at Player Profiler. Of course, we'll check out your rankings, fantasypros.com. The Riz God himself, Bradley Stalder, joining me tonight on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Show on the Better Sports Network. Anything else that we can make the viewers aware of that you are producing as far as content goes, not only for the remainder of the season, but beyond the season as well?
Definitely. So check out fastdraft.app. Fastdraft.app. Billy Muzio and Matt Kelly developed Fast Draft, and it is something I'm working content-wise now. And you just draft as fast as you can. You can set turbo boost. It's all about drafting as fast as you can. And they've got some tournaments over there. But just last week, I started producing some content for Fast Draft Fantasy YouTube channel. Got some videos out there, some strategy. So if you like to, our favorite part of fantasy is drafting, right? So you just draft, and it's fast. You get as many in as you can, and it's a lot of fun. So, but I offer some strategy on that. So check out Fast Draft Fantasy YouTube channel this week.
The other thing I'll mention too, Man versus Machine with you and Ryan Reynolds. Is it what time? I know it's every Wednesday night. Is there a specific time it always goes off that people can watch live?
Normally 9 p.m. Eastern on the Roto Underworld Network channel.
Okay. All right. So check that out. And of course, to follow this and all other updates, anything else that Bradley Stalder is doing at FF Stalder on the X. Bradley, thank you so much. This is, as always, a lot of fun with you, man.
Thanks, Balky. I appreciate it.
For our producer, Matt Deutsch and Bradley Stalder, thank you so much for watching tonight. We'll be back next Thursday with FF Today and Fantasy Points Doug Orth as he joins me for 2 full hours. MyFFPC.com is where to go for the FFPC Weekly Challenge. Go to myffpc.com. Enter for as little as $35. Win as much as $2,500. That is going to do it. Enjoy the rest of the Rams-Niners punt fest that is going on. Maybe some offense going on. I'll let you watch it right now. Thanks so much for watching. This has been the FFPC High Stakes Fantasy Football Show on the Better Sports Network. Talk to you next week.